welcome to this week's edition of Shaynel's 3 Cents. I am your host, Shaynel Caldwell, founder and executive director of Our Blended Families. And again, welcome to Shaynel's 3 Cents. I want to start first off by saying thank you so much to our guest host last week, the wonderful, the awesome Miss Drew Elons and her wonderful two guests that were able to follow up on our political conversation about all the wonderful things that have been happening in the last couple weeks with regard to, of course, all the election coverage, all the recounts, all the races, and all the nice little blue little wave that we had going through. It's kind of nice because we still see that the wave is still rocking the boat and we still have some changes that are being made. So that's really exciting, and there are a lot of good events that we're looking forward to happening soon with regard to changes in the House. Not so much the Senate, but we'll discuss that another time. But again, wonderful week. Also had an opportunity for us to see some of the more interesting things that have happened here in the U.S. Of course, we are still looking at the fires and the things that are going down in Southern California. We're also trying to address another shooting, another mass shooting that happened that, of course, our nation is looking. We're still trying to figure out if we should be sending thoughts and prayers or if we should actually be finally trying to make some type of gun reform measures in addition to hopefully some mental health discussions and also some changes in the laws. So again, a lot of things have been happening recently in the news. We're actually going to get started pretty quickly with our guest today, the beautiful, awesome, the Mrs. Dr. Robin Bell. And the reason it's important for us to bring her today is because our awesome, wonderful president, they're actually finally talking about prison reform. And it's a big deal in America. Just about everyone that we know, including myself, are literally connected to someone that has touched the criminal justice system or is currently still in the criminal justice system. So if you're talking about Cousin Mookie, Cousin Dede, Cousin Joan, Cousin James, somebody has touched the system, whether or not they were arrested and were not able to maintain a record, which is a good thing, and or they were arrested, they have a record, a felony, and or a misdemeanor on their record. Everyone has been literally touched by the criminal justice system. And so we're going to talk about reform. We're going to talk about some new ideas and resources for rehabilitation and reentry. And we're also going to talk about what you can do as an individual to make sure that you're impacting important change in your community with regard to how people end up in the criminal justice system, how people end up being failed by the criminal justice, and ways that we can hopefully prevent entering the criminal justice system at all. So again, we want to say thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to take a quick break and be right back with our guest momentarily. We'll see you back after this message. so much for waiting while we went to the commercial break. I am back with my guest today, the beautiful, the awesome, the Dr. Robin Bell. Yeah.
I don't know about all that.
You are
Thank
beautiful
you.
and you are awesome. Why don't you tell the audience why I think you're beautiful and awesome?
I don't know why she thinks that, but I'll tell you a little about myself.
Please do.
Okay. I'm Dr. Robin Bell. I'm retired military. And this journey with me started when I was in the military. Want me to finish?
Please.
Okay, when I was in the military, I worked for an organization that had the most discrimination cases in the Department of Defense.
Should we give a shout out to that branch of the military right on the heels of Veterans Day?
Okay, that was 13 years ago when I retired. Hopefully it changed. But I was the equal opportunity advisor for that organization, and I traveled the world facilitating classes on treating others with dignity and respect. And I used to train general officers, laborers, soldiers. And when I wasn't traveling, I really didn't have anything to do. I was headquartered in D.C. So I went to the Justice Center of Atlanta. I got certified as a mediator. I came back to the D.C. Superior Court, and I took the classes so that I could mediate there. And while mediating at the D.C. Superior Court, I saw such a disparity in the sentencing guidelines between young African American males and males of other races. Yes.
That's quite unbelievable.
Well, it's true. I believed it.
And so this is something that you, of course, this wasn't particularly your job, but it was something that you happened to notice while you were doing your job.
Absolutely, because when I was traveling the world, and in 2003, I could not believe the discrimination that was still going on. So I wanted to, you know, do something about it or do more, have a voice. So while mediating at the D.C. Superior Court, like I said, I saw so many young African American males come through with low-level drug offenses, and they were getting sentenced. It was just such a disparity than the other races. And normally when these young guys came through, they were with their mothers, an attorney, a court-appointed attorney,
Public defender.
a public defender. They're still attorneys as well. And they didn't have their fathers with them. But when the other races came through, they normally were with their fathers. They had a paid attorney, and it just turned out to be so different. And I realized that these young men that were going through the system, that this was changing their lives, and they didn't have a clue how they would be affected by these low-level drug offenses. So I decided when I retired from the military that I was going to get a degree to be able to help. I didn't know how, but I knew I was going to insert myself somewhere and have the knowledge. So after I retired, I went back to school to get my doctorate, and my dissertation research was on nonviolent African American males with drug addictions who recidivated. And I went back to my small hometown, and I interviewed a lot of those guys, and I got their stories.
And can you tell us really quickly your hometown, that area?
Yeah, Gretna, Virginia. I was born in Jersey.
Jersey?
Yeah, so Gretna, Virginia. It's a southwestern town, about 45 minutes south of Lynchburg, Virginia. Okay. So I went back there, and I interviewed some of those guys. And from that interview, I ended up writing a book from my dissertation, because one of them went back to prison, and it's a small town, and my mom gives my phone number to everybody, and one of them called and said that he was locked up again, still a probation violation, and he said, I would like to see what you wrote about my friends and I when you did the research. They didn't understand the dissertation process, so they thought it was just research. So I found out that you cannot send books to state prisons. They have to come from a publishing company. So I took parts of my dissertation and excerpts from all 10 of the guys that I interviewed, and I wrote a book. And he was the first one to get a copy.
So essentially, he was the seed that actually grew to you publishing your first book.
Publishing my first book. Didn't have a clue. It's a quick read, but yes. So,
I've read it. It's a great book.
All right. Thank you. So, so after that, I started volunteering. I have spoken at colleges. I've spoken at prisons. I volunteer now at the Alexandria Detention Center. And when I first started volunteering at the Alexandria Detention Center, I was working with the males because I thought I never wanted to work with females. And then the coordinator of the volunteer coordinator, she asked if I would work with the ladies, that they needed someone. So I went in and I started working with the ladies, and the rest is history. I will never leave them.
Oh, wonderful,
yeah.
Wonderful.
So, yeah, go on.
Okay, so I think that what I want to do is I want to kind of go back and make sure that we've taken all your wonderful lingo and translated it. So
okay.
we're going to bring it from here and bring it down a little bit. For those of you that have been watching, my understanding, Robin, is that when you were going to court and you could see that these young black men who are frequently in court for various reasons, but most of them were in court for minor drug offenses. Either they, got caught holding a bag of weed, or got caught selling or transferring or something like that. Right. And it was time for them to go to court. They're in court with just their mama and their public defender.
Absolutely.
And they're getting, because we see this a lot in the news, and there was a nice little social media write-up about it a couple months ago, where they had a young black guy and a young white guy, and their offenses were the same, but of course their sentences were drastically different. Right. And so you also mentioned, and I think that's important to note, that not only when the other races, mostly the young white guys, went, they didn't have a public defender. Absolutely. They had a high-powered attorney, a paid attorney, and not just their mother, but they also had their fathers and a support system. Absolutely. And so I guess we kind of assume that the judges kind of read a little bit more into that not only you have this attorney, but you also have the family support, which we tend to lack in our communities.
Well, I'm not sure if the judge read more into that, but it's just that the paid attorneys, in my opinion, worked a little harder. And, these children, the young men of other races, they had resources. Right. They had a job to go back to, a home, schooling and things like that. Where in most cases with the African American males, they didn't have a lot of resources. Anyone to really stand up for them and say, Judge, if you'll just, wipe this from his record or whatever, pay a fine, then I will get him a job, or he can work for me, or I have a friend that he can work for. Right. So things like that, yeah, because they were mostly from low socioeconomic backgrounds. So it was a major difference.
Absolutely.
It was a major difference.
And even from the time that I spent in the criminal justice system, for those of you that don't recall, I worked as a juvenile probation counselor back in Contra Costa County some time ago. And so we would see a lot of that as well, that when any offender goes to court for whatever they may be accused of at that time, we want to try to put them in some type of diversion program so that, one, that you don't repeat your offense, you don't become a repeat offender, and the best way to do that is to make sure that you have resources on the outside.
Absolutely.
And so a lot of those folks tend to make sure they're able to say he has a job, or he has some schooling, he has some supportive family, whereas on our side, we don't tend to see enough of that. Absolutely. To where we can get him a job, or he has his job to go back to, he has his family, he's currently enrolled in these particular classes, we don't want him to miss out on his schooling or anything like that.
Absolutely.
So aside from writing the book to get yourself more involved and of course become a part of this movement for rehabilitation and reentry, what else did you do? And I understand you have a wonderful, loving husband that also may have helped along this journey. That's what I heard.
That's funny. I do. I have an amazing husband, and I could not have done all of this without him, because he supports me 100%.
Absolutely.
But I don't know. I mean, I've done well. There was another inmate that I've never met, and one of the inmates that were in the book that I wrote, he was incarcerated again, and his cellmate read my book. And his cellmate had been in and out of prison since 1975, and he gave me a call. The participant did, not the cellmate. And he was like, Robin, my cellmate read your book and he's impressed. He's been writing since 1975 and he would like to have his writings published. I never met him. I didn't know what his crime was, how long he was in for. He sent me his writings, and when I got this big stack of papers, I told my husband, oh my God, I do not feel like reading this stuff. An hour and 45 minutes later, I was still reading. I couldn't put it down.
Wow.
So to make a long story short, I published his writings. He was 64 years old. In 2016, he got sentenced to 38 years at the age of 64. And he told me, he said, I know I'll never breathe free air again, and I will die behind prison walls. So you don't know, how much it meant to have my writings published. And it's titled Ghetto Pies, so, and I've never met him, so I published that book for him.
Awesome, awesome. So tell our viewers about your organization, R4.
Okay, that's what you were talking about. I'm a little slow. Okay. Because of all of the volunteer work that I do with inmates, working at the Alexandria Detention Center, and I told you I work with the ladies, and the ladies that I work with, most of them are looking at a lot of time. The Alexandria Detention Center is the only federal holding area, so these ladies are normally there waiting to be sent to prison. And it wasn't their first time, most of them, first or second time. And they told me, they said, Dr. Bell, the way that you can help us is start a nonprofit. They said when we were out, and the reason that we continue to recidivate is because when we get out, there are no resources. And if there are, they're sending you here, they're sending you there, and you just get so frustrated. We need a one-stop shop where someone can tell us, this is where you can go for this is where you can go for that, to have connections. So I started a nonprofit in February. I resigned. Had been with the government forever. So I started a nonprofit, Rehabilitation, Reform, and Reentry Resources. And this nonprofit provides access to companies that hire felons, tattoo removal, drug rehabilitation, CDL classes, everything that an inmate would need. We cannot, R4, we do not provide all of those things, but we know the other organizations that do. That absolutely, that do provide those things. And we can, with donations, provide a lot. And we just sent out our letter for donations maybe 2-3 weeks ago, and we truly appreciate all the donations that's coming in. We are able, for Thanksgiving, to feed 10 families of 4
awesome.
For Thanksgiving. And we're also going to do Christmas for the kids. And our nonprofit does provide, like, we will ensure this year for Christmas, families that want to visit a loved one that's incarcerated, we will provide the lodging, the gas, the food for the families to travel, gifts for the kids. So, yes, with donations, we can make it happen.
Man, that's awesome. That is awesome. And I think it's really important because, as you mentioned, you're actually hearing it from those individuals to say, this is the type of help that we need.
This is what we need.
And when we got out and we tried to make an effort to stay on that quote-unquote straight and narrow path, these were the things that were barriers for us.
Absolutely.
And so I think it is important because not only your organization, but there are other organizations out there, but they need a voice. They need that marketing. They need to be connected to other people so that people are aware that there's help out there.
Absolutely.
So, yes. So can you tell us your website? We're going to put it up a little bit later, but want to tell our viewers the website for R4?
Okay, the website is the letter R, the number 4, the letter U.org. www.weare4u.org.
Awesome. So let's turn the tables a little bit. I actually received a phone call from a friend earlier, who was also a previous guest on the show, my friend Lamont Carey, and he also does a lot of work within the criminal justice system, helping young men, and he's also a poet and an entertainer and all these awesome things. So he's able to connect on a different level, and so that's the actual first person I'm gonna get y'all connected with right away. But I think it's important to note that as we're putting out these resources, can we possibly pinpoint, what the top ones are? I know we talked a little bit earlier about when you go into the courtroom, having a public defender, and there's kind of mixed emotions. And I know even though I said public defender, I thought it was nice that you mentioned, they are actually paid defenders. You're always going to have that animosity about, well, I don't want a public defender, but it's usually coming from people that, of course, are low income. Well, you don't have anything other than a public defender. This is all that you have. So, but are there ways that families and, of course, the inmates themselves anything that they can do to, in your opinion, to help the public defender along, to say, this is the information that you need about me, or this is the information that I can help you collect about my case or about, my family circle or anything like that? Anything that you think might benefit our people to know this is how you work with a public defender?
Well, I don't, and I also volunteer at the D.C. Court of Appeals. I am a public member on the D.C. Court of Appeals, and that's when attorneys get in trouble. They have to come before a board of 2 attorneys and 1 public member. So I'm one of those public members. So I have to say that public defenders, they are great. They're just doing their job. They're overwhelmed. And I don't know of any way that, families can help, but it just makes such a difference when you have a high-powered paid attorney. I just think they're not so overwhelmed with their caseloads.
Because they could be selective, and of course, if you can't afford it, then they're on to the next case.
Absolutely. Where the public defenders, they're just overwhelmed with caseloads because, look, we have mass incarceration. There's just so many, people in prison. So I don't know if it's any way that families can help along the public defendant, because they are paid by the state. So their caseloads are just overwhelming.
Okay.
Compared to the high powered.
Okay, and I guess it does make a difference where at least 1 or 2 public defenders, when you come in, and I assume when you get in your office that morning, you probably have a stack of up to here. These are your cases for the day, and whatever assistance you may have in your office is, you're trying to go through everything and read through as much as you can. Right. Plus, you still have the pressure that, many of us may not be aware. You have the pressure to close the case and to not drag it on as long as possible. Right,
and then the plea bargaining, that's a problem as well, because a lot of time when these young men and women, are arrested, they are kind of forced to take a plea. That way the state or government, they're not spending a lot of money on these cases. Right. So they're kind of forced because they don't have resources. If I hear, you take 2 years opposed to 10 years, and you don't stop to think, man, this is messing up my record forever. But you really don't have a choice when you don't have a lot of resources, a lot of education, and a lot of awareness. You just, you take the plea.
That's true. That's true. And I also believe that that's one of the reasons why we need to have, organizations such as yourself, so that we're letting people know that these are the ways that we can help you. Oh, and by the way, if we're helping you here, hopefully that will distract the other people that are also considering following in your footsteps. That, Mookie no longer on the corner, I can take his corner. No. That's not what we want to happen.
Absolutely.
We also want to see you succeed, because we also know there are a lot of institutionalized ideas that are surrounding, we want you to stay exactly where you are. Don't move. Look, don't move. Don't progress. Don't get a job.
Right.
Don't get off aid. Just stay exactly where you are.
That's true.
So some of the resources that I also heard you mention were companies that hire ex-felons. Are you? How do you go about connecting with these companies? Or do you actually have a couple that you connect with, and they actually feed you this bits of information? Or have you connected with ones personally via job fairs or that nature?
And I have connected with companies via job fairs that do hire and they are called returning citizens.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
awesome.
now they're returning citizens. So I do, you know, have point of contacts. And I was really amazed when I first started this nonprofit at the number of resources that the state of Virginia offers. Northern Virginia. I mean, there are so many resources, legal assistance. The DMV, they will assist with getting the proper identification. So Northern Virginia offers a lot of resources, but not so much the further south you go. So that's why...
South of the Mason-Dixon line? No.
Southern Virginia. So that's why my main, even though, you know, our foundation is in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, we also reach out to Southern Virginia, where I was raised, and, you know, because they don't have the resources. And there are a lot of organizations up here that do what I do. Right. I mean, they may not be a one-stop shop and send people, you know, because since starting the nonprofit, I've reached out to a couple of nonprofits to say, hey, do you need families that don't have meals for Thanksgiving? And lo and behold, yes, they do. Wow. So, you know, we just all have to work together to spread the resources so, you know, that everybody that gets out, that's my goal, to be productive, law-abiding citizens, because the resources are there to assist them with that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break. We're also going to come back with Dr. Bell's website so that you can see what her website looks like. And then we're going to come back and have a little controversial discussions about reentry and how people actually fall into these areas of crime and some of the things that are happening in national headlines. So we'll see you right back after this break. Okay. Okay, welcome back. We're here with Dr. Robin Bell here on Shaynel's 3 Cents. And for those of you on Facebook that are watching, unfortunately you weren't able to see, but we do have her website posted up right now. Again, it's www.we-4u.org. So it's weare4u.org. And so again, we're showing the website about her new organization. And we also talk about her vision. So,
yep, the vision is for returning citizens to come back to be law-abiding, productive citizens, just to help in the communities. I mean, like Shaynel said when she first started, incarceration affects everyone in some form or fashion, and only if it's when the returning citizens come back. They are coming back to your communities, your neighborhoods, your states. So instead of spending all this money having them incarcerated, I think it's over $8 billion a year, then with the resources to help them reenter society, that would be so much better.
Awesome, awesome. Okay. One of the things that I wanted to note as we go back live, excuse me, as we go back live, your book, False Start, one of the things that struck me as most impactful when I picked up the book, because I ordered it on Amazon, so I was like, hey, let me go ahead and get but it's titled False Start, Race to Prison, and in parentheses under that is, my mom set me up.
Yes.
And I mean, I was literally blown away when I saw that. I'm like, oh yeah, I got to read this. I got to see, what this means. So can you elaborate a little bit about that? Because of course, as a family life educator, for me, it's all about how do we prevent these things from happening. And so I thought that was an awesome way to, one, not only get that information about, how I ended up having my run-in, but also, are there things that we can do to possibly prevent it? So.
Okay. Yes, the subtitle, My Mom Set Me Up, is very controversial. Not one of the inmates or recidivists, because they had all been to prison or jail several times and were back in society, not one of those guys, after reading the book, agreed with me. My mom set me up, in my opinion, and with research, it was we as women, we are the only people in the world that can have children. And if we do not make better choices, instead of having child after child love children by men who are incarcerated or have 3 or 4 children or in and out of the judicial system, then we will never stop this false start race to prison. Because when you bring a little black boy into this world, already there's 2 strikes. They're a little boy and they're black. Absolutely. And when they're raised by a single mom with no positive male figure in the household, low socioeconomic backgrounds, most of these guys did not even have a high school education, peer pressure, drug use at an early age. So when you continuously have these children and not thinking about them, in my opinion, your mother did set you up, because we as women are the only people in the world that can make a choice to have a child. So I just think...
I'm sorry, let me just take a bam break. Let me say that again. I think that, again, that bears repeating, because, we talk about it all the time. Oh, we having kids, yeah, but it's the woman that has the child. It's the woman that makes the decision to have a child. I don't care what y'all say about, oh, well, the man ain't did nothing but contribute. Okay, he contributed and that's it. It's up to a woman to decide to have a child. Whether or not she believe in abortion, she don't believe in abortion, she have a miscarriage, she get raped, whatever, but it's up to a woman to decide to have a child.
Absolutely. And I'm a guest lecturer at Howard University, and we had the biggest debate. I mean, I brought it up, I had the book in there, and I mean, it was an amazing debate how some people thought, no, it's your situation. You can't help it. It's your environment. It's the way that you were raised. This is all you know, is to continuously have child after child. But then you have to make choices. I mean, if you're in your right mind, then you have to make smart choices.
We emphasize being in your right mind, but
yeah, yeah, to make smart choices, not just for you and the man that you're having the child for, but you have to think of the child in the society that we're in today and what's happening with our young black men and mass incarceration. So those are things that women have to take into consideration when they are having child after child with no positive male figure in their lives. And I'm not saying that mothers cannot have children without a father, but then you have to ensure you have the resources for those children. You can take care of them, you can feed them, and things of that sort. So,
right. And I think it's also extremely important to note that while people say, well, I'm doing this out of love, and this is important for my family, and our family tradition is this, or this is my religious background, that's all good and great, and I'm not negating that at all. But the studies have shown time and time again that of the people, particularly the males, that go into the criminal justice system here in the United States, they are young males who don't have fathers.
Absolutely.
And again, you cannot dispute that. I don't care what you say. You cannot dispute the facts. You guys know me. I'm all about that facts first. My new hashtag, FYF, facts first, F your feelings. Your feelings can come into play later, but we're going into the facts. Most of the young men that end up in jail, that also end up, as Dr. Bell said, becoming repeat offenders, recidivists, have no fathers.
Absolutely.
And so we have to start looking at, how is it that we can do better? And of course, because of our blended families and because of some of the other organizations that I work with, it's important for us to make sure that we are pushing parents, people that have had the kids, people that have contributed seeds, kids that have raised them, grandparents that have raised them, aunties, uncles, cousins, whoever has taken part in that child's life. We need to work together to make sure that we have a village, that they have resources, that they see positive, as you mentioned, positive male role models in their family, in their communities, whether they're, coaches or, trainers, teachers, whatever it may be. A father is always best. Stepdads are good.
Right.
Baby daddies are even better. But we need to make sure that our young men from the start have male influence in their lives. That's
Absolutely.
Number one on how we can curtail these men going into the system.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
like I said, just having the book pop up again, that's always important for me because we want to look at, what can we do to help prevent this?
Right.
Another way that we can help prevent this is, by taking part in things going on in our community. Because we're just finishing up the elections. For those of you that aren't aware, the state of Florida just recently passed an amendment number 4, that allows ex-felons the right to vote. And that is important. Why? Because you need to know what's going on in your community.
Absolutely.
You need to make sure that you're voting on, yes, we're going to bring in companies that will hire people that have records. So, yeah, we want to be in control of that. We also want to be able to say, hey, I want to make sure I can get my driver's license back.
Absolutely.
If I go to prison, that I can get it back without any incidents, that I can, get some type of decent car insurance, and that I can get it at a cost that's affordable to me. And, guess what? I want to go back to school. I want to make sure that I can get that at a reasonable cost as well. So being able to vote and having states such as Florida be a part of that and say this is important because these people matter as well.
Absolutely.
And creating those additional resources.
Yeah.
So, like I said, wanted to make sure that we brought that up. I'm sorry, did you want to say something before I go into this chart? Because I actually have a chart that we're going to talk about. And the chart, if I can find it, talks about the different states that allow ex-offenders to vote.
No, I don't have anything else to say unless you have some questions.
Okay, and I think I just missed it, but we're going to try to pull it up again because you guys know I'm important on changing our communities. So while I'm bringing this up, do you want to tell us a little bit more about some of the upcoming events that your organization has? Tell us about the Thanksgiving and how do you get families that want to be a part of it, or have you reached the maximum number of families, or how can they connect with you?
Well, we have not reached the maximum number of families. We have about 4 or 5 more families that we can feed. So if you know of a family in the Washington, D.C. metro area, and because our organization works with the population of people that's been incarcerated, returning citizens, or their spouse is incarcerated. Those are the people that we will provide dinners for. And like I said, it's a turkey and a meal that will feed 4 people.
Any chitlins on the menu?
Oh my God, no. Who's going to cook them? No, I'm not cooking. Yeah, so we do still have some meals. And also for Christmas, we're going to provide gifts for the children who have incarcerated parents, because children are impacted so negatively when their parents are incarcerated. It's a stigma that they will carry forever. And while we're on this topic, I just wrote a book. It's going to be published next week. Ooh. My nephew has 2 daughters, and their mother is incarcerated. And I met them in April when my brother, their grandfather, passed. I've known them, but I formally met them in April. And I asked how their mom was doing, and one of them got really shy. She said, "You know where my mom is?" I said, "Yeah, I know where your mom is." So she talked to me about it a bit. And then, so after talking to him that day, I said, "How would you guys like to write about, you know, your feelings and emotions and the things?" Because they said they were never able to talk to anyone because it was embarrassing the way people treated them. The kids teased them. Right. So they, over the summer, they wrote their little memoir and they sent it to me, and I fixed it up a bit and put some research in it. And yeah, it will be published next week, and the title is Until We Are Together Again.
Oh,
so
that is wonderful. Look, I'm getting a little teary-eyed on that.
Wait till you read it. It's a great little
35-page book. I might not read it.
Yeah,
that's also, you know, a little-known area that's also talked about, you know, the children of people that go into the criminal justice system.
So yeah, for Christmas we will be, you know, giving toys to the children who have parents that are incarcerated, and just anything else that we can do to make the family feel whole again. So
now my sister, and of course our executive producer Shara Robinson, I always remembered back when we lived in California how impassioned she was about working with her church's prison ministry. And, you know, even when I would sit there sometimes, "You going back to the prison? Why? Why are you going back and doing all this stuff?"
This is awesome.
Look, again, just hearing her stories and hearing how she was able to connect with some of these people, because why? They didn't really have anyone else. You know, you're gone away. And of course, we have the differences between prison and jail, which sits according to, you know, how long you're sentenced and where they send you. And a lot of these people don't get visits because if you may have committed a crime in Maryland, but they send you to prison in Indiana, you know, or you've committed a crime in Florida and you're sent away to Montana. And so it's harder for your family to stay connected. You know, you have the, you know, "Can you put some money in my books?" Well, gee, I haven't seen you or talked to you in 3 months, but, you know, they still want to have soap or be able to listen to music or be able to buy books and things of that nature. But for their kids, you know, no one's helping their kids make this trek to go see their parent. Absolutely. And because of the stigmas in the school, you know, "Where's your dad?" Everyone else is talking about their dad. Or "Where's your mom?" Everyone else is talking about their mom. And seeing them, you know, I just can't imagine how traumatic that is for their kids to be disconnected from their parents, and, you know, people trying to tell whatever stories they may have. Well, your dad had to go work on the railroad, or your mom had to go do this and this and this, but not being able to fully say that we may not see your mom for another 10 years, or we may not see your dad for another 20 years. And so the kids do get left behind.
They do get left behind.
And I understand sometimes in that desolation, you know, they end up going down these paths of, you know, poor mental health, and they similarly will end up being affected by the criminal justice themselves.
False start. Raised to prison. Yeah, it does affect children negatively.
Yeah, so we're so going back to kind of complete that circle again, because you guys know I'm big on voting. Looking at all the states that currently have that currently allows felons, and a lot of the states are different with regard to what their rules are, because you don't have to be in prison, but if you have a felony on your record, a lot of states take away your rights forever. You have committed or you've paid your debt to society, but you still can't vote ever. And again, that just seems wrong to me. If you paid your debt, that should be it. That should be the end of it. So this is one of my the websites that I've been going to back and forth the last couple of months. It's called felonvoting.procon.org. And what they do, and we have this up on our station right now, but it shows the different states that allow felons to vote and some that are actually looking at the possibilities of losing their right to vote, and people who are able to gain their rights to vote once they come back into society, once they pay their debt. So I think that's important for us to start looking at, particularly, whether or not you live here in the DMV, because the laws are different, depending upon what street you cross, if you're in D.C., Maryland, and or Virginia. And, of course, whether or not, this is going to affect your family when you come back. Our family, we have a family member that, and I'll always remember this, he committed a crime. I want to say he was about 19 years old when he committed this crime, and he was sentenced to life in prison. And we were grateful that he didn't get the death penalty because of the crime that he committed. But we still, he calls and, we'll send money, and, he does the three-way calling. And I'm always amazed. I'm like, well, who did he call to three-way me? He could have called me directly. But I'm grateful that he's still able to communicate with people out there. And, again, I haven't seen him. I'm grateful for some of the other resources, the ways that you can send money now to inmates to make it nice and simple. Some of the inmates have access to emails so that you can send them emails and communicate that way and send pictures, because they are still human beings.
Absolutely.
Because they committed this offense, we still want to rehabilitate them, and we want them to feel remorseful for what they did, and we want them to come back to society if they're able to. Absolutely. So having these resources once you come out only enhances us, and it makes us do well. So while we're our family's trying to stay connected, and of course in the back of our minds we're trying to figure out if and when he is released, how can we support him, and how can we make sure that transition is a stable transition and as smooth as possible. Right. Again, because that's still our family member. We still, love him. So.
And rehabilitation and reform starts in the prison. It starts behind prison walls, and it starts in your mind. The individual has to be ready to live a different life, and without them being ready, all the resources in the world doesn't help. So that's why I always say those that are ready. But rehabilitation and reform starts behind prison walls with the individual themselves.
Okay, I appreciate you saying that, because that's also one of my favorite phrases. Everybody ain't ready. Everybody ain't ready. So, so whether you're going to the parole board or you're coming up for a review, if you're not ready, then you're probably not going to be successful.
Absolutely.
You're going to be on your way
back in there again. Absolutely. So.
And I'm actually also remembering when I used to work for the juvenile probation department. We would see the kids that come back. We'd be like, "Oh, welcome back," and I would hear in my mind the "Oh, welcome back" Cotter song, and we would tease the guys for coming back in or the young ladies for coming back in. But those were the young people that I hugged the hardest, because I'm like, I'm so disappointed that you weren't able to make it. Was it something that we did, because we were the probation department? We didn't help you enough, because it was so sad to see them coming back in. You're 15, and this is your third offense. This is the third time that we've seen you here in the juvenile detention center. So I am grateful for your organization and others such as yours, and future folks that will be partnering with R4 to make sure that those resources are available and that they can connect with your organization. Are there any parting words that you want to leave with our folks, or ways that they can help their community or get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, you have my email, the website. In the email, I guess you can put that up for them.
We'll actually have that on our website.
Okay, so all of that will be on the website. But yes, we just all need to do our part when the people that are returning from incarceration are ready to be a part of society, law-providing, productive citizens. We need to do what we can to help them, because like I said, they're coming back into our communities, our neighborhoods, and if we all just work together, it can all work out. It really can. It really can. Because like you said, they are humans just like we are. They made a mistake.
And a lot of us just ain't got caught. So let that be known.
That's the truth.
Lord knows I don't want nobody digging into my past. But anywho.
With your clearances.
So again, again, we want to say thank you so much to Dr. Robin Bell for coming to visit with us today, and thank you for sharing your information, your history, and your background on the organization. And we certainly wish you much success, and we'll have to have you back next year to tell us how everything went for Thanksgiving and Christmas.
All righty.
And so again, we want to say thank you all for tuning in for this week's edition of Shaynel's 3 Cents. We hope you like everything you heard today, but if not, at least you heard it. We'll see you back next week.
Thank you.